Bella Okoye stood at the airport terminal, staring at her phone. She had just finished attending a design convention and was supposed to be on her way back to Lagos. But her flight had been delayed due to a technical issue, and now she was stuck. There was a family emergency waiting for her at home, and she couldn't afford to waste hours standing. She looked around the terminal, trying to think of what to do next. Then she noticed a man talking to an airport staff member a few steps away. He was giving instructions about his private jet being ready for takeoff. She heard the word Lagos, and her ears picked up. She stood up quickly and walked toward him. "Excuse me," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm sorry to bother you, but my flight was delayed and I really need to get back to Lagos. Is there any way I could come with you?" Zane Donovan turned to look at her with a hard stare. In his mind, he was already saying no. But as he looked around, he saw how empty the terminal had become. Most people had already left and she looked like she had no other option. He sighed quietly. "Fine, but we're leaving now." Bella nodded quickly. "Thank you. I really appreciate it." Once they got settled inside, Bella sent a quick message to her family to let them know she was on her way. Zane, who had sat across from her, glanced at her every now and then. He noticed she wasn't trying to start a conversation or get his attention. She just sat there, clearly thinking about something important. To his surprise, he found himself wondering what her emergency was. Normally, he didn't care about strangers, but there was something about her that made him curious. He also couldn't deny that she was beautiful. Bella, on the other hand, noticed he barely said a word and just sat across from her, reading something on his tablet. He didn't ask for her name, nor did he offer his. Once they landed in Lagos, she turned to thank him again, but he was already walking away. Still, she remembered his face. A few weeks later, she was invited to an art gala by one of her old clients. The hall was filled with art pieces and well-dressed people chatting over drinks. Bella moved through the crowd slowly, mostly just looking around. While passing a row of paintings, a man beside her made a quiet comment that caught her attention. She glanced at him and gave a small smile. They introduced themselves, his name was Luca, and continued walking through the hall together. Luca was easy to talk to, funny and friendly without trying too hard. He wasn't overly serious, but he wasn't careless either. Bella felt at ease almost immediately. Luca had noticed her right away. She didn't try too hard like most people at the gala. She just had this easy way of being confident without showing off. She looked good, but it was the way she spoke that caught him. Straight to the point and a little funny without even trying. He liked that. They exchanged numbers before the event ended. That night, he sent a message and soon they began talking more often. Bella didn't know that the quiet man from the jet and the warm man from the gala were brothers who hadn't spoken to each other in years. She only knew that, in two very different ways, both men had stayed on her mind. Bella was excited when she got the call. A top luxury development firm had picked her to design the interior of a new private clubhouse. It was a big project that could help her career grow faster. At her first site visit, Bella walked into the building to familiarize herself with the space. As she checked out one of the open rooms, she noticed a man speaking with the site manager. He turned slightly, and her eyes locked onto his face. It was him, the man from the jet. She hadn't expected to see him again, especially not here. He looked at her, and she could tell he recognized her too. They exchanged brief introductions, Bella as the new designer on the project, and Zane as the owner of the building. After that, he turned back to his conversation with the site manager, and Bella continued her walkthrough. One afternoon, while Bella was giving instructions to some workers, Zane watched her closely. He remembered her from the airport, but now he was seeing a different side of her. He respected people who knew what they were doing, and Bella showed that many times, by staying focused and fixing problems without panicking. Before long, he found himself wanting to stay a little longer just to see how she handled things. She wasn't just attractive, she was capable, and it was hard not to look at her sometimes longer than he meant to. Over the next few weeks, Bella spent most of her time at the site making sure everything stayed on track. Zane stopped by occasionally. He never stayed long, but when he was there, they talked briefly. Their talks were always respectful and to the point. Bella noticed how carefully he listened, choosing his words with thought. His presence was strong, and whenever he looked her way, she felt it. She couldn't quite explain the feeling, but she was drawn to him, even though he confused her. Zayn never acted flirtatious or crossed any lines, yet somehow, her heart still raced around him. Then one afternoon, something unexpected happened. Bella was checking fabric samples near one of the large open areas when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "So this is where the magic happens." She turned and saw Luca standing there with 2 cold drinks in his hands. "I remembered you told me about this clubhouse project. I thought I'd stop by and surprise you, also I figured you'd be too busy to eat, so I brought something for you," he said with a smile. She took one of the drinks and thanked him. They walked toward a quiet corner of the site, sitting down on a nearby bench. Just as they were settling in, Zayn stepped into the space, holding a rolled-up plan in one hand. He hadn't expected to find anyone there. His steps slowed, the moment he saw them sitting together. Luca stood up immediately, his expression changed the second he saw who it was. "Well," Luca said after a beat, his voice losing its usual playfulness, "this couldn't have gotten any better." Zayn didn't smile either. "Didn't expect to run into you here," he replied. Bella stood up slowly as well and looked between the 2 men, finally putting the pieces together. They had the same last name, and now that she was seeing them face to face, their resemblance was impossible to miss. She hadn't connected it before, but now it was obvious. They were brothers, and something about the way they were speaking told her they didn't get along. Zayn turned toward the site manager and gave instructions about a delivery. Once he was done, he gave Bella a short glance, then walked out of the building without saying another word. Luca sat back down beside her and looked in the direction Zayn had gone. Bella didn't say anything, but her thoughts were racing. It was clear that something personal had passed between the 2 men, something that hadn't been resolved. Their conversation was short, but the tension underneath was hard to miss. Seeing them together, even for just a short moment, made her realize how different they truly were. And as she sat there beside Luca, she started to think about how each of them had been with her. Zayn was quiet and hard to read. But when she spoke, he gave her his full attention. He didn't say much, yet he noticed everything. The way he paid attention to details, both in her work and in her, made her feel safe around him. And even though they didn't know each other well, she found herself trusting him more than she expected. Then there was Luca, open, full of charm, and always ready to laugh. Being around him was easy. He asked questions, listened, and always made space for her thoughts. With him she didn't feel pressure. He brought out a lighter side of her. One that didn't have to think too hard or hold anything back. They were 2 very different men, and she liked them both. But for very different reasons. And the more she thought about it, the harder it became to ignore what she was feeling. Bella had expected the clubhouse project to challenge her professionally, but she hadn't expected how much it would pull her into something personal. Both Luca and Zayn were no longer just people connected to the job. They were getting closer to her intentionally. Zayn didn't change overnight. He still stayed observant and rarely said more than he needed to in front of others. But when they were alone, he began asking her things that had nothing to do with the project. One evening, it started raining heavily just as Bella was finishing up on site, and she didn't have an umbrella. She stood near the doorway of the clubhouse, watching the rain beat down hard against the pavement. Most of the workers had already left. Zayn appeared a few minutes later, holding his phone. "I don't think this rain is stopping anytime soon and I can't drive in it," he said. He looked around the open space, then back at her. "Do you mind my company while we wait?" She hesitated for a moment before answering. "I don't mind." They looked around for somewhere to sit and eventually settled on a low bench near one of the open windows. They didn't speak at first. Zayn sat with his hands resting on his knees, watching the rain. Then he asked, "What made you choose this line of work?" She looked at him, surprised by the question. "I like fixing spaces," she said. "When I was younger, I used to move furniture around my room just to see what made it feel better. I realized I liked turning chaos into something calm. People feel different when they're in the right space. It gives them peace. That's what I try to create." Zayn nodded slowly. "That makes sense." He was quiet again for a moment, then said, "I've spent most of my life doing the opposite." Bella looked at him, curious. "I've been through things that taught me to keep my guard up," he added. "Some lessons came the hard way. When you've had people get close just to use it against you, you learn to stop giving anyone that kind of access." Bella didn't speak, giving him space to continue. He continued, voice steady. So I started keeping things in and stopped showing too much. I thought if I could control how I acted and what I showed, then no one could use it against me. But after a while, it just became who I was. Controlled and cold. Not because I wanted to be, but because it felt safer that way. If people don't know what matters to you, they can't break it. Bella nodded slowly, not because she agreed with shutting the world down, but because she understood why someone would. From there, the conversation continued. Zayn asked about her family and she told him about her parents and younger sister. She talked about her early projects, the struggles of starting her own design business, and the clients who never trusted her judgment until the very end. He listened to all of it and asked more. She told him everything, sharing stories that made them both smile. He told her about the early years of building his company. He had worked hard, trusted the wrong people, and learned to rely only on himself. Bella had always seen Zayn as distant and guarded. But now, she saw a man who had lived behind walls for so long he didn't even realize how high they were. Yet here he was, sitting with her and letting some of those walls down without being asked. By the time her ride arrived and pulled up beside the site, the rain had slowed to a light drizzle. She stood, and so did he. "Thanks for waiting with me," she said. Zayn gave a small nod. "Anytime." As she got into the car and it drove off, she looked back once. Zayn was still standing there, hands in his pockets, watching the rain. That evening stayed with her, because it was the first time she had seen a part of Zayn that most people never got close to. Luca, on the other hand, brought color into her days. He visited often and made no effort to hide his interest in her. He asked her out for lunch breaks and even joined her at a supplier's showroom when she mentioned she needed help choosing fabrics. When she had long days, he was the one texting her funny memes or checking if she'd eaten. He made things lighter without making them less serious. They also talked about more than just work. He told her about growing up as the younger brother, about his love for art and music, and about how he always felt like he had to stand out to be noticed. She listened to him, and he opened up more each time they met. One afternoon, she mentioned she needed to check out a supplier showroom across town. The next morning, Luca offered to drive her. "It'll save you the stress," he said. "Besides, I've been told I make great company." She smiled and agreed. The ride turned out to be longer than expected because of traffic, but the time passed quickly. Luca kept the conversation easy. "So when you're not turning buildings into masterpieces, what do you actually do for fun?" Bella laughed. "Honestly? I just rest. My job already takes a lot out of me." "I get that," he said. "My job does the same. But I think fun is necessary." They visited 2 showrooms that day. He carried the samples and gave surprisingly useful opinions on a few pieces. Afterwards, they found a quiet place to eat nearby and sat across from each other, both a little tired but in no hurry to leave. Bella stirred her drink slowly, still thinking about the day. It had been easy in a way she hadn't expected. "I've really enjoyed today," she said, glancing up at him. Luca nodded. "I did too. And mostly because I got to spend it with you." He leaned forward slightly, resting his arms on the table. "Whenever you talk about your work, your whole face changes. You light up." Bella looked at him, surprised by how closely he'd been paying attention. "I don't think I noticed that," she spoke quietly. "Well, I notice a lot when I'm around you," he replied. When they reached her apartment, Luca didn't turn off the engine right away. He rested his hands on the wheel and looked straight ahead, thoughtful. "People don't usually take me seriously. They see me as the easygoing one, the guy who jokes too much and never really means what he says." Bella turned slightly to face him. "And sometimes I let them think that," he went on. "It's easier most of the time. If people think you don't take anything seriously, they stop expecting too much from you. But with you, I don't feel like that version of me is enough. You make me want to be more present," he added. "And I haven't felt that way in a long time." Bella looked at him, thoughtful. "I don't think you have to try so hard, you already show up more than most people I know." Luca blinked, like he wasn't expecting that. He didn't say anything right away, but the look in his eyes softened. "Let me know if you need help with anything tomorrow," he told her. She nodded and stepped out of the car, and as she walked to her door, she felt his words still sitting with her. He had meant them. That much was clear. Over the next few weeks, Bella noticed the change. The two men weren't just hovering near her life anymore, they were making space in it. Each one, in his own way, had started to show up consistently. Then it happened. Luca told her first. It was after they had spent an afternoon together. When he dropped her off, they stayed in the car for a moment. "I've liked you for a while now," he said, not looking away. "I know you've probably felt it, but I needed to say it out loud. I don't just enjoy being around you. I care about you." Bella had expected it. He had been showing her through his attention, his visits, and the way he always made time for her. Still, hearing it being said made a difference. "Thanks for telling me," she said honestly. He just nodded. "I'm not trying to make this hard or pressure you. I just want you to know where I stand." A few days later, Zane spoke too. It was late, and she had stayed behind at the site to supervise a delivery. Zane had dropped by unexpectedly and ended up helping her sort through missing items. After they finished, they sat outside, both of them quiet. "You work harder than anyone I've ever met," Zane began. She smiled. "You're not so bad yourself." He looked at her then, more directly than he usually did. "I don't always know the right time to say things," Zane said, "so I usually say nothing at all. But I like you," he continued. "I don't have perfect words for it, and I'm not used to saying things like this. I just wanted to be honest." Bella looked at him, unsure of what to say. He wasn't the kind of man who said things without meaning them. And that made it matter even more. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. "I didn't expect to hear that from you," she said. "But I'm glad you told me." Zane gave a small nod, and neither of them said anything else after that. They sat there for a little longer, that moment already leaving its mark. Later that evening, as Bella made her way home, her thoughts kept circling. Zane and Luca had both spoken to her about their feelings with honesty, and now she was stuck in the middle, trying to figure out how she truly felt. She liked them both, and that was the hard part because they had each been there in different ways. Now, she was just trying to understand her own heart. And until she did, she couldn't give either of them what they were waiting for. Bella started noticing the change slowly. Zane no longer lingered after meetings. He barely looked at her unless it was something related to work. At first, she brushed it off. Maybe he was busy or dealing with something else. But then it continued, and the space between them started to feel too wide to ignore. He used to show up when she least expected it, offering help without asking, staying behind to finish things that didn't concern him, listening to her ideas even when she rambled. But now, he stayed away. When he did show up, his presence was cold again. Polite, formal, and distant. The version of him she had started to care for, the one who had let his guard down, seemed to disappear. She tried not to take it personally, but his silence left her unsettled. Bella caught herself waiting to hear his voice in meetings, hoping he'd ask her something, anything. But he didn't. He avoided conversations unless it was strictly necessary. He avoided her. Luca, on the other hand, was clear with how he felt. He didn't hide it or hold back. He showed her that he liked her and made an effort to be around her. One afternoon, they sat outside during a short break, eating lunch together. The weather was warm, and the site was quiet for once. Luca had just finished telling her a story about a trip he once took to Italy. He laughed as he remembered getting lost in a tiny street with no signal and no idea how to ask for help. Then, as the laughter faded, Luca leaned back and looked at her. "I know I've already said how I feel about you," he said with his voice softer now. "But I want you to hear it again. I care about you, Bella. A lot more than I expected to. It's not just a passing thing or something I'll get over next week. I take it seriously." Bella didn't say much, but she gave a small nod, and he smiled like that was enough for now. Even with everything Luca had said and done, Bella still felt a gap inside her. Something in her heart stayed unsettled. She tried to ignore it at first, telling herself maybe she just needed more time. But the feeling didn't go away, it grew stronger. She missed Zane. So one evening after she had come to a decision, she made her way to his house. It wasn't their first time seeing each other outside work, she had been there before. But this time she was going with a different intention. When he opened the door, his face changed slightly, like he wasn't sure whether to let her in or not. "You've been avoiding me," she said before he could speak. He stepped aside slowly to let her in. She walked past him into the living room, turning to face him as he closed the door behind them. You were letting me in before, and now you're acting like I'm just a passerby. I thought it was better this way, he finally responded. Better for who? Bella asked. I didn't pull back because I stopped caring, but I pulled back because I care too much, he told her gently. There was someone years ago, Zane continued. Luca and I both fell for her. She played us, told us what we each wanted to hear. I thought I mattered to her and had a chance. But she chose Luca. After a short pause, he continued. Something in me changed after that. I felt like there was no point holding on to anything anymore, so I shut everything down and stopped getting close to people. It was easier to keep my distance than to let anyone get too close and risk feeling that kind of loss again. When I met you, I didn't plan to let you in, but I did. Then I started noticing how you are around Luca. You laugh with him, you're relaxed, and he knows how to be open with you. I know what that looks like because I've seen it before. I've lived it. And the last time I let myself believe I had something real, I ended up alone. I'm not trying to go through that again. So I pulled back, not because I stopped caring, but because I didn't want to be in that place again, caring about someone who might not choose me. Bella didn't know what to say right away. She could feel the pain he hadn't dealt with for years. She now understood his distance and hesitation. Finally she spoke, her voice steady. I didn't know any of that, she said. But I wish you had told me. Zane didn't look up right away. You pulled away when I was starting to feel close to you, she went on. And I didn't understand why. I won't lie, Luca has been open and yes, we've shared good moments. But that doesn't mean I didn't feel something strong with you too. She stepped closer. I came here because I missed you, she said, taking a slow breath. I won't pretend I have it all figured out. But I do know what I feel when I'm with you. I feel safe. You don't have to say much, but you make it matter. And I think I was already choosing you, long before I realized it. He still didn't speak, but something in him softened. She added, you said you didn't want to care about someone who might not choose you. Well, you don't have to worry. I'm here and I'm choosing you. Zane looked at her and let his guard down completely. Bella didn't rush. A few days passed before she found the right time to speak with Luca. She knew it wouldn't be easy. He had been kind and open to her. He never played games, and she respected him for that. She sent him a message, asking if they could meet. He replied almost right away, saying yes. They met at a quiet spot near the worksite, just a small cafe they had been to once before. When she arrived, he was already there, waiting. Hey, he said as she sat across from him. Hi, she replied. Her voice was calm, but her thoughts were steady now. She had gone back and forth enough. I wanted to be honest with you, you've been good to me and made things easy when everything else felt like too much. And I've appreciated every moment with you. He looked at her and nodded slightly, but didn't interrupt. I didn't expect any of this when we met, she continued. And maybe for a while, I didn't even know how I felt. But I thought about it a lot and I now have clarity on how I feel. Luca leaned back slowly. His eyes stayed on hers. I care about you, but I realize that what I feel for Zane is something I can't turn away from. And that's what I want. Luca looked away for a moment, then back at her. Thank you for telling me, he said softly. I knew it might go this way, but I just hoped it wouldn't. Bella nodded, not sure what else to say. I don't regret trying. I meant everything I said to you. There was a quiet silence between them, then Luca stood up. I hope you're happy, Bella. He gave her one last look, something between understanding and letting go, then left the cafe without looking back. Days passed, and things between Bella and Zane became more settled. The work on the clubhouse had already wrapped up, and with the project behind them, they now had more personal time together. Zane took her out on a couple of dates, and they spent more time getting to know each other better. They talked more, laughed more, and slowly grew comfortable in each other's space. But even with how well things were going, one thing stayed on Bella's mind. Zane still hadn't spoken to Luca. She knew it wasn't something he liked to talk about. But after everything that had happened, and everything she now understood, she felt it was time to say something. One evening, they were in Zane's living room, halfway through a movie neither of them was really paying attention to. Bella sat close beside him on the couch, her head resting lightly on his shoulder. Zane, she said, have you thought about reaching out to Luca? He didn't respond right away. His eyes stayed on the view in front of them. I know you're not close anymore, but I think maybe it's time. You've both carried this for years, and I don't think either of you really moved on from it. Zayn exhaled and sat up slightly. It's not just about what happened back then, he said. It's the years that followed. We didn't talk or try to. And the longer it went on, the harder it got. I understand, but maybe that's why it matters now. I know it won't fix everything, but maybe starting the conversation could help. He's still your brother, Zayn. He looked down, then told her he didn't even know how to start. Then start with that, she replied. Start by telling him you don't know how, but that you want to. Zayn didn't answer immediately, but she could see he was thinking about it. The clubhouse was finally open. After months of planning and hard work, the launch event had arrived. People filled the space, clients, investors and friends. Bella stood with Zayn near one of the open walkways, watching guests move through the building. Zayn had stayed close to her all evening, quietly introducing her to people and occasionally leaning in to check if she was all right. As the night continued, someone new entered the room. It was Luca. Zayn saw him the moment he stepped into view. Bella noticed the way his posture shifted slightly, but he didn't turn away. Instead, after a brief moment, Zayn excused himself and walked across the room toward his brother. Bella stayed where she was and watched from a distance. When Zayn reached Luca, he spoke. Thanks for coming. Luca looked at him for a moment. His face didn't give much away at first, but after a few seconds, he nodded. I wasn't sure if I should. Zayn replied. I'm glad you did. I know we didn't handle things well, Zayn continued. I shut you out because I didn't know what else to do. But I've had time to think. We lost years and I don't want to lose more. I'm not asking for things to go back to how they were, I just want us to try and get to a place where we can be close again. Luca gave a slow nod, his expression softening. We can try. I'm with Bella now, Zayn added. And I didn't plan for that to happen, but it did. And I care about her deeply. Luca met his eyes. I know you are with her and I'm glad you two found each other. His voice carrying acceptance. He glanced around the room, then back at his brother. You've done a good thing here. Zayn gave a slight nod. It wouldn't have come together without her. Bella had watched the entire exchange quietly. She didn't need to hear every word to understand what was happening. Later that night, back at Zayn's house, the two of them settled in the living room. Zayn poured them each a drink, and they sat together on the couch, letting the silence stretch comfortably between them. He reached for her hand. Thank you, he said softly. Bella turned her head slightly. For what? Zayn looked at her for a moment. For standing by me when I didn't make it easy. For pushing me to face things I've been running from. For being the one person who saw through the walls I'd built and still stayed. And for choosing me. When you didn't have to. Her fingers tightened around his. You've given me more than you know, he added. You didn't just help me reconnect with my brother. You gave me space to feel again. Bella smiled, her heart full. That's what love does. Zayn leaned in, and Bella moved closer to him. He placed his arm around her and she rested her head gently against his shoulder. And as the night closed around them, Bella knew she had chosen not just the man she loved, but a love that felt steady, strong and lasting.